After a series of missile launches over the last few weeks, North Korea convened its second Supreme People's Assembly of the year on Thursday, where Kim Jong-un's leadership was further cemented through a partial constitutional amendment. This while foreign ministry officials of Seoul and Tokyo met to discuss pending bilateral issues. Today, we go in-depth on North Korea's latest political activities, as well as on developments between South Korea and Japan amid continuing trade tensions, with Dr. Jung Dae-jin, a research professor at the Ajou Institute of Unification. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So, Pyeongyang state-run broadcaster KCTV, following the Supreme People's Assembly, announced that Chairman Kim Jong-un, who represents North Korea, now has, quote, stronger legal status and his leadership is firmly guaranteed. Now, some might question how much more power is there left for Kim to grab? Could you give us an insight on the changes made?
Okay. In the past, North Korea has two kinds of head of state. The first one is a nominal head of state, and the second one is an actual head of state. It's a substantial head of state. So the president of the presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly is the nominal head of state. Currently, incumbent President Chairman takes that role. But as everybody knows, as Chairman Kim Jong-un is the actual head of state, as a real head of state, and this past constitutional revision has normalized some gap between the constitution and the reality. This past constitutional revision includes the stipulate that explicitly that Chairman Kim Jong-un is the head of the state, official head of the state, is stipulate that, and then it bridged the gap between the reality and the law.
Now, what's also worth taking note of is that Kim Jong-un will be directly involved in the appointments as well as the dismissals of North Korea's diplomatic envoys to other countries. What does this imply? We know that a number of high-ranking North Korean diplomatic envoys defected over the last couple of years.
In the past, the nominal head of state, so-called the president of the presidium of the SPA, Supreme People's Assembly, have authority to name and appoint and recall its diplomatic envoys. But this constitutional revision separate the authority to the real leader, Chairman Kim Jong-un, and the head of state, the president of the presidium of the SPA, Supreme People's Assembly. This kind of revision implied that the normalization of the power mechanism as a normal state did. In the past, the nominal head of state has authority to recall and name the diplomatic envoys. It is some kind of bargaining chips to avoid some diplomatic negotiation talks with other countries for North Koreans. The nominal head of state is our supreme leader, is the kind of some North Koreans statement in the past. But now the constitutional provision bridges the gap between the reality and the law. The supreme leader takes authority to recall and name the diplomatic envoys. It becomes the same pattern as other countries did in the past. And the North Koreans separate its authority to the nominal head of state and the real head of state. But now the head of state take that authority and then utilize its power as other countries' leaders do.
Now, there was no word, though, about the stalled nuclear talks with the U.S., and also North Korea refrained from lashing out at the South Korean government. Why do you think the assembly was convened at this time?
I think at this point, the bonding, especially the domestic bonding, internal bonding is the very important thing for the Chairman Kim Jong-un, because other counterparts, including U.S. and South Korea, are lashing out, and then they are blaming North Korea's tactics, and then its introvert attitude toward the denuclearization. And then at this point, in North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un needs some very strong and tightened grip on power inside his country, and then he requires to bond more strictly in domestic society. At this point, and he decided to open the Supreme People's Assembly. This is the second assembly just after 4 months of the first session. It's very short term, and he would like to explicitly revise and bridge the gap between the reality and the law surrounding his country.
Now, speculations were high that that Pyongyang-Washington nuclear talks would resume on a working level ever since the historic DMZ handshake between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. But North Korea is showing no sign of a possible resumption of its talks with Washington. Why?
I believe there are some very huge gap that cannot bridge between U.S. and North Korea. North Korea believe that their decision or their definition of denuclearization is resulted in the dismantling Yongbyon nuclear facility. Yongbyon nuclear facility is the center of the North Korean nuclear capability, and then North Korea think that they yield everything by expressing it would dismantle Yongbyon nuclear facility. And then Yongbyon nuclear facility is the end state and the final goal for the North Korean. But from the U.S. perspective, dismantling Yongbyon nuclear facility is the starting point. Yongbyon nuclear, the big deal, what Trump says is including Yongbyon and then dismantle all the other nuclear facilities in North Korea, because and that means that the Yongbyon is the starting point of the North Korean nuclear dismantling program. There is a very huge gap between U.S. and North Korea. Cannot be breached in the short term.
So the definition of denuclearization is once again in the way of the two sides, and there still is a huge gap between them that is yet to be bridged. Now, word has it that U.S. Special Representative on North Korea, Stephen Biegun, is being considered as the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. State Department. Now, if that is proven to be the case, how would it affect future Pyongyang-Washington nuclear talks, and also who will likely be the Washington's next point man on North Korea?
Yeah, but there are some rumors that many candidates, including Biegun's post and then including Bolton's post, many candidates were speculated in the Washington D.C. as far as I know. So General McLeod, General Water, and then some candidates are on the short list of the maybe President Trump's table, but at this point, the Biegun has been speculated as a candidate for the U.S. ambassador to Russia, and then at this time, and then also considered as some deputy secretary of the department of the U.S. State Department. So then, it is clear that Stephen Biegun is a very talented man to deal with some diplomatic issues. But there are many other candidates including, as I mentioned, General McGregor or General Wader, who is on the shortlist for the next special envoy to the North Korean issues, or the national security advisor to President Trump. Some guys, some candidates speculating in the Washington, D.C. at this point will be replaced for the Stephen Biegun's post. But I'm sure, but as far as I know, at this point, Stephen Biegun has not did not willing to go to another position, as he mentioned, and then Stephen Biegun is the very appointed man to deal with this current impending North Korean nuclear issues.
Now, the U.S. has once again expressed disappointment over South Korea's decision to terminate GSOMIA. And this has stirred concerns here in the country over a possible crack in South Korea-U.S. alliance. And Seoul's foreign ministry also yesterday called U.S. Ambassador Harry Harris to once again explain Seoul's stance, as well as asking the U.S. to refrain from making further comments about South Korea's decision to terminate GSOMIA. Do we need to be worried about South Korea-U.S. alliance?
Originally, I think that South Korea and U.S. has some different perspective and different perception regarding the Korea-U.S. alliance. For South Korea, the U.S.-Korea alliance is the best chip to deter North Korea's threat. But for U.S., the South Korea-U.S. alliance is the linchpin to expand its strategic horizon on the Northeast Asia and then maintain its influence on the region. And then beyond deterring North Korean threat, for U.S., the Korean alliance should be utilized to blockade the Chinese expansion. But for Koreans, there will be some questions when U.S. urge or demand the alliance expansion or alliance functions beyond deterring the North Korean threat. Whenever U.S. try to attempt to expand its alliance mechanism to use its bargaining chip or to use its chip to deter the blockade and Chinese influence, there were whenever that kinds of actions and measures and unfolds, there are many concerns and then doubts are growing inside Korea. It was the history, and then it will be, I think, repeated. But the most important thing is that the communication between two countries. Alliance does not mean just the identical one. Alliance has is constituted of the different sovereign states. They have different views and they have different interests. But how to manage the conflicts, how to communicate to each other is the healthiness of the alliance. So now we are under some pressure or under some test period to amend the kinds of communication between U.S.
Now, a director-level meeting was held between the foreign ministries of Seoul and Tokyo yesterday, and top nuclear envoys of South Korea and Japan also met. How do you see the outcome of those talks?
Top nuclear envoys of two countries is they aim to deal with the North Korean nuclear issues, as everybody knows. Now it is important to differentiate and then to distinguish the internal and domestic politics and then the foreign affairs and diplomatic issues, and then also distinguish the trade and historic conflicts, impending conflicts, and then the security issues, the common security issues and challenges. Now it is required to have some wisdom and then strategic attitude to be patient when we deal with some kind of shared issues. And that kinds of attitudes is required, highly required at this point.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jung, for your insights tonight.
Thank you.
And that wraps up our show. Thank you, as always, for being with us.